All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. It's 12:03. That's as long as I can wait in the Zoom world. Miss Emily Roussel, I am so happy to have you here today. As I couldn't help but point out, you were my first ever hire at Live.Laugh.Denver real estate team when we were a team. And I've trusted you with so many things and probably some secrets along the way too that I don't even remember because we also have a good time together. But beyond all of that, she and her husband, now husband, have built quite the real estate portfolio. And so I wanted to give her an option to share her story. Here at Women Investing in Real Estate, The Wire, Live, Laugh, Invest, we're giving a voice to your everyday, your neighbor who is an investor. These aren't folks who are necessarily, buying 500 unit apartment buildings or moving millions and billions around from different hedge funds. These are real people doing real investments. And so, yes, we are here to tell that real story, and Emily Roussel will be kicking us off. So I will start you off. Oh, and I want to just give a quick caveat. She is about 6 months pregnant, and we think baby boy might be inside of her lungs. So if you're catching her breath, just know that it's because
there's a reason. Yes.
Pushing them up. And so while some people get pregnant and decide to nest a little bit or relax a little bit, Emily always does the opposite. Always. This is number 2, but the first pregnancy, she was also keeping herself quite full. So Emily, my first question for you is, did I miss anything in your intro?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. Can you summarize your investment story and and what that looks like for you?
Yes.
What that looks like for you guys. So go ahead.
Yeah. I do appreciate the caveat. If you're wondering why a lady who's just sitting here doing nothing is out of breath and super winded, that's why. There's a baby in there pushing up. So to summarize our investment portfolio, and I say our because when I met my husband, he already had 7 properties, right? So he bought his first house when he was 24. I met him when he was 28 and he had 7 houses. But at the same time, when we had met, I had gotten into real estate. So I was seeing things from 2 sides, right? Like this guy that I was dating was super passionate about real estate investment. He has a full-time job. This was just his passion. He was, trying to set himself up for, a secure financial future. So I was seeing it from that perspective. But then also in my day-to-day job, in my profession, I was seeing people doing the same thing, buying houses and using those as tools to set themselves up for, whether they were going to sell it and use that to upgrade later, they were going to pull the equity and buy a second home, an investment property. So I was just seeing it from so many different angles and I got really excited about it really quickly. So that was 8 years ago we met. Brian and I bought our first house together. We were still dating, and that was 7 years ago. Since then, we've bought 9 houses and sold 4. So we have a total of 12. 8 of them are in Minnesota, in a tiny little town called Owatonna. It's not where he's from. He's from New Orleans, but it's where his company is headquartered and where he moved here from. So it's where he started investing. We still invest there today. We have 1 in Texas and we have 3 here in Colorado. So we have sort of a mixture of investment styles, if you'll call it that. We have properties that were our primary home. So we moved into them, we lived in them, and then we rented them out behind us. We have properties that we buy strategically or solely as investments to buy and hold. And then we now just took on a very exciting and somewhat overwhelming endeavor in buying our first short-term rental property in the mountains that we're furnishing, we're renovating, and we're gonna get it ready hopefully by November. We have people ready to book it and ready to rent it for Thanksgiving. So we've got our first short-term rental. So
exciting. I was just telling actually my mother-in-law about it. I want to book it. I want to rent it. It is beautiful. Really, and those views are insane. Emily does not do things half-assed, for better or for worse. And the mountain home, it might end up being for worse. She is making it look picture perfect when it was already pretty much perfect. But I think we're hitting a wall with that, right?
Yes, we are.
I think something I'd love to have you expand on a little bit is, one, I forget about Texas. Where is it in Texas again?
So it's in Crosby, Texas, outside of Houston. It's where Brian's sister lives. So he has the biggest heart. I love him. And that has sort of come into a lot of his different real estate investments. But this one is his sister's home that she is actually going to be buying from us next year when we turn that property into a different investment. So she's had a home to live in, a safe home where she knew it wasn't gonna, go away. And now she is gonna purchase it from us and be a homeowner. And so it's really cool.
Yeah. And I thought that was the story behind it. And I love that. It's not just, I feel like when Brian was 24 and thinking through this stuff, knowing him the way that I know him now, he was also thinking, how do I provide this security for my family that I didn't necessarily grow up with? This level of financial security and that stability that comes with having a place for people to live. So if his sister wasn't equipped to buy a home at the time, hey, Emily and I can scoop in and buy that home, swoop in and buy that home, and you can buy it from us. And that way you have a level of security. Of course, mixing business and family can be a little bit difficult, but when you know they're good for it, you got to trust your gut on it. So, and then with Minnesota, you mentioned that's where his headquarters are. And what's the average home price there? Ish?
Yeah, it depends on what you're buying. So he has purchased a home there for as little as $35,000. That same home would probably still be 85 today. I mean, you can buy homes for much less than here in Colorado, but your standard single family home that you and I would, think to move into today, you're still probably looking at 400. I mean, it's not like crazy cheap, but our last investments, we bought 2 properties there last year that were 190 and 200. And those were 3 and 4 bedroom, 2 bath homes, like not super updated, but in good condition, nice homes. So a little bit different than here, which is why those are the homes that, you can put 20% down on. Those are the strategic, like strictly investments versus the primary.
Yeah,
we go.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right, cool. And then you guys, if you have any additional questions, I have a series of questions to ask. But if you have any additional questions, please feel free to pop them into the Q&A and we'll get to those for sure as well. What is the one thing you wish you would have known when getting into all of this?
So we've learned this the hard way. The one thing I wish I would have known is the importance, and there's a lot that goes into it, but the importance of vetting your tenants, getting the right people in your property. And there's a lot that goes into it. And it kind of depends, right? If you have it starts with the house first. First and foremost, it starts with your house. No matter what, like you have to have a quality home to get a quality tenant, right? You don't have to have something that's gorgeous and renovated top to bottom, but just something that's in good condition. If you're going to expect somebody to take care of it, you have to provide them with a home in good condition. But so it depends on if you have a property manager or if you're managing it yourself, which we have both. But if you have a property management company, usually they're going to have their own standards for how they're vetting tenants, but you can create your own and they kind of go along with that. So going back to when I met Brian, we went to go visit all of his properties. It was probably 6 years ago now. And we went and walked through all of them. And it was like a huge eye opener as to like what was actually happening and the people that were renting properties. And so again, huge heart, love him, wanted to create opportunity for people, but he was allowing people with super low credit and people who couldn't afford the rent on their own, whether that was government assistance or a family member was paying their rent or whatever. Like, so we made some adjustments because we just saw the houses. I mean, they were a wreck. So we went in and made some improvements to the properties that were necessary. We actually sold a couple of them, but we fully renovated one, but we just we put the properties back in good condition and we made some adjustments. So our credit minimum is now 650. People have to qualify for their home on their own. So you can have a level of control that way, even with a management company. So then if you're managing it yourself though, it does take some work up front to get a quality tenant, but a lot of people, especially if it's your first one, you buy an investment property and it's like, I just have to get somebody in there right now. I have a mortgage on it, I have expenses, like I just need somebody in there. But it's so important to vet your tenant and get the best possible tenant in there, somebody who is going to take care of it, because that's going to save you money and a lot of headaches long term. But so everything from going back, condition of the home, but then staging it, marketing it properly. You know, we take professional photos. I host an open house, so I'm there meeting people in person. You can learn a lot about a person just having that, you know, one-on-one interaction. And then, you know, there's a background check, there's a credit check, there's all that, but it really is, it's paid off. I mean, we've been so fortunate, but it's also been strategic in just the tenants that we've had, especially in our Colorado properties. They've just been great, but it's because we do the work up front to make sure that we get the right people in there. And then
Right.
like the
Right.
house that we just sold in Wheat Ridge, we didn't put $1 into it. We didn't even have to replace the carpet, and we owned it for 6 years. So it's just, you know, getting good people who are going to take good care of it.
You didn't even have to replace the carpet.
Nope.
Did they have a dog?
We had 3 sets of tenants in there, and 2 of the 3 had a dog.
Wow.
One had a puppy.
Wow.
I know, we got really lucky with that one. I mean, we went in and like painted and freshened up and, you know,
Sure.
fixed a few things before we sold it. But yeah, we didn't have to replace the carpet. We didn't have to do
Yeah.
anything. It's cool.
That's awesome. All right. What do we got in the Q&A? Oh, I see it now. McKenna's asking, how do you get an Airbnb process started as the owner for a short-term rental? Do you want to talk about the mountains, and I can talk about the more urban areas?
Yeah, you know that. I mean, this is our first one. So we're sort of in that process right now. We're in that learning process. We applied for the permit through the county. You know, you have to get it approved. If there's an HOA, you have to do all that. But it's the approval, but then it's furnishing it, making sure that there's literally everything from linens to wire whisk to, you know, anything you can think of that people are going to need. And then we still are in the process of getting it listed, getting it photographed, getting it all that. But you do have to get the permit in place. I know that. And, you know, beyond that, I guess I would need more specific question.
Yeah. I think the tricky thing with Airbnbs and any kind of short-term rentals, whatever service you're using, is making sure you know what the licensing and or permit requirements are for that county. It's usually county. It can be HOA specific as well. The HOA would then supersede any county or city guidelines. And then getting it prepped, I think, you know, it's a big haul from IKEA a lot of times, you know, because you're not just furnishing it. You have to make sure that, I mean, we've all stayed in an Airbnb that like didn't have a sheet to bake cookies on. And your dad, who loves roll cookies because he's stuck in 1996, is like freaking out because it's like, where's a man supposed to bake his roll cookies, right? So it's like you have to have these minimum standards. The good thing is, you know, I would go through my own kitchen when we stocked our local Airbnb in Denver before we switched it around. But I went through my own kitchen and made a list of what I thought I would need. They don't need a full kitchen, but you know, those minimum appliances. And then I think that one of the things I learned from Airbnb is, man, do people rip sheets a lot? Like, I don't know if it was like the cleaners were hard on them or what, but I felt like we were constantly having to replace sheets. So that's the big thing to be, you know, aware of, is that there are things that you would think are disposable become unfortunately quickly recyclables. Okay, I got a question before we go back to Q&A than expected, and then on the other side, that's harder.
Okay, you're breaking up a little bit. Can you hear me okay?
You're good.
Okay, cool. So what turned out to be harder than expected is sort of, it's funny because that's what has in turn made things easier. So it's, you know, one, I keep going back to it and I will, like it's the work up front, right? You have to do all of the work up front. If you're doing that, then you're creating a situation where it's a lot easier than I anticipated to own a property or multiple properties. But the work up front, it's hard. It's a lot, you know, initially. Again, I go back to the condition of the home. You know, if you're buying a property, you're going to have an inspection done. And, you know, some things will get addressed by the seller, but there's always a list of things that need to be done. Do it. Like, that's a piece of advice I can give you. Go through and fix those things, because eventually you're going to need to, and it's easier to fix them up front before you put a tenant in them in the house than it is later when they're calling you. And, you know, anyway, so the work up front, make sure your property is in good condition. And then again, stage it properly, market it properly, get the good tenant in there, but then also create a team, I mean, it's making sure you have a plumber, making sure you have an electrician and a contractor or a property manager, I mean, whichever way you're going to go, but making sure that you have all those people in place because things come up. You're going to have emergency situations, you're going to have issues. And if you don't know who to call, like it's a huge headache. But by doing all that work up front, it actually becomes pretty easy to manage a property and to have somebody living in a home that you own. Like there are times Brian and I kind of forget that we own this many properties where it's like, it's really cool. We've provided housing for this many people and we are sort of securing our financial future and we get to just live our day-to-day lives. We both have full-time jobs. We both, we have a lot of other stuff going on. You kind of forget that you've got all this other stuff going on in the background. But again, it's because you do the work up front.
Yeah.
And then it sort of makes it easy. And I have, I guess, 2 examples that I could use for that. One, we in our King Street property, so it's a property we bought in Sloan's Lake. It's the first house we bought together. We still have it. We renovated it last year. It needed it. It just, but we did. We updated it in ways that we needed to make sure that it was in good condition. That house, going back to do what you find in an inspection, that house flooded because it was called out in the inspection that the grading was negative. We had a super rainy June and our whole basement flooded. That can happen even in Colorado. So do the work up front. But so we put tenants in that property a year ago this month. They've been there for a year. We completely forgot about them. Like literally, we have not heard from them. They pay their rent. Totally forgot we even had this house. Forgot their names even. Like wouldn't have been able to tell you if you'd asked me. So then about a week ago, 2 weeks ago now, they out of the blue were like, oh my gosh, we have sewer water coming out of our shower in the basement bathroom. It's like all over, like things happen, it's a home, like things happen. But we have our team in place, right? So we had a plumber over there in less than an hour. He fixed the problem. And then we, within 2 days, had the house cleaned. And we didn't just clean the bathroom. I mean, think sewer water in a bathroom, that's gross. We wanted to make sure that they were taken care of. So we just paid for their house to be professionally cleaned. And then we had a carpet cleaner going because it had come out of the bathroom under the carpet. Like, and it all happened. We didn't even have to go to the property. We had our team in place. We put people in there. Our tenants were thrilled. They were so grateful. They were so happy. And, because we've done the work up front, when situations like that come up, you can handle them, and it's not that big of a deal. That was gross, but easy. I mean, we figured it out.
Yeah.
And then I guess
Sounds
the other
shitty.
yes.
We're getting a lot of good questions, so I'm going to interject real quick. And it's Tanya, I hope. If it's Tanya, please correct me somehow. I don't know how. But what has been the best way to find good tenants next door, Craigslist? And do you manage all of them your own or use management company for any of them? I'd like to speak to one of those. I would stay away from Craigslist. It has continued to have a ton of scams.
Yeah.
I think Nextdoor is a good option. Facebook has been a really good option, Facebook Marketplace, or even putting it in the neighborhood of where the house is, because the neighbors then go, oh, my friend's looking for a place or whatever. And so you kind of get referred in that way. I will send out information afterwards about a property management system we're using. My husband and I tend to try it before. We tend to buy it before we tell you to try it and buy it and then tell you to buy it or invest in it. And it's called Hemlane, and it's an online portal that is, it's basically a property management portal. So you can self-property manage for about $500 a year versus using a property manager that's more like 8 to 12% per month. And so that has been a really good go-between for us because of a couple of different reasons. I don't want to spend too much time on it, but I'll definitely send a link out to it after this. And with it, it also is a one-click to automate all the marketing to legitimate sites. And it includes your contracts in it. It includes state-specific contracts. It includes a place for you to put in your own vendors. And then it puts a third party in between you and the tenants in case they do have an issue. Again, we're like 2-3 months into trying it. And then we even set it up here for the office so that Tracy can be on the consumer side and we could try it that way. So
cool. I've never heard of it. I want the link.
I know. Well, I've just started talking about it. I'm always apprehensive about suggesting anything I haven't done myself.
Totally.
Which should make everyone think twice about what I suggest. But Emily, to you specifically, to speak to the property management side, because I think you guys have help in Minnesota, correct?
Yes. So we have a property management company in Minnesota, and it's, there's really only one option. It's a very small town. And we've gone through different property managers through the same company that we've been using all these years. But what was the specific question? Yes. So
yeah, property management, but then you manage all your own here.
we do. So we have a property management company in Minnesota. They're great. We have surprises though, like with management companies, sometimes the communication's not great, and all of a sudden it's like somebody's been living here with a hole in their roof, or this is real, for 6 months and we didn't know about it. Like, what? Versus if you manage them yourself, you have a lot more, I guess, involvement, good or bad. I prefer that. But again, as long as we have the right tenants and things are going smoothly and you're not hearing from somebody every other week. But we have a mixture of both.
I think in general, property management is super easy unless it's not.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
right.
For sure.
I feel like you're like coasting. And then, Freddie, my husband manages ours, but it's like every time that like at 3 properties an appliance goes down, he's like, oh, it's appliance week. We need, a new appliance here.
Yep.
Which leads, what did you say, Em?
You have nothing, everything's good. And then boom.
Totally. But I think that's why I've been so apprehensive about hiring a property manager locally, is that I honestly am challenged to find someone who does good work as a property manager. I won't do property management professionally because I think it seems awful. But which is a whole nother, conversation for another day. But also whenever we refer someone that has a great reputation, a client uses them, and then I feel like it's really leaving a lot to be desired. So the self-management piece, like Emily said, you have more control when you're getting the right tenants in. We're going to have to go back and forth a little bit on that. We might have to rumble around the 650 credit score business, but because I'm like, if they have that, why aren't they buying? Right. But anyways,
I know. Yeah.
Well, I mean, not rumble, like fight,
minimum
ground rumble. Like, let's talk through that in a little bit. But anyways, I think that, ultimately I like to have more control. And if I'm waiting to hear about a hole in the roof, I'll lose my mind. And that's probably why I have a tendency to invest under my nose. That said, if I was investing across the country, I would likely use a property manager. Yeah. Joy asked, how much savings would you suggest having set aside for each property for the repairs that may come up?
So the general rule of thumb that I understand it to be is 10% of whatever your gross income is. So our numbers are a little bit different, but with 12 properties, we set aside, or we expect $2,000 a month. And it's not going to be every month you have $2,000 in expenses, but and actually no, now that we added the Airbnb, sorry, it's more. But you want to make sure that you've budgeted for that. You want to have money, and it's really, everybody's a little bit different in their comfort zone. Some people have to have tons of reserves, and they just have to be prepared for like the worst case scenario. We make sure, because we know, not every month you're going to have issues, but when you do, you want to make sure that you've got cash to cover. 10% is what I hear is the average.
Yeah, I like that with the 10%. I think that like a good, like easy number rule of thumb would be like a month to 2 months you want to have in reserves for each property. And the nice thing is that if you can get it purchased and rented right away, you're going to automatically have a month's rent, because you shouldn't have to pay your mortgage until, a month after you close. And so that can be helpful on that piece of it. I want to get back real quick to you, Teresa. Chad, congratulations on your marathon. I literally had anxiety with all your posts. This isn't about me, but I'm very proud of you. How do you decide what's a good investment property locally? I trust my gut, and then I run the numbers on it. And so we will share our tool we use to run those numbers. It really just depends. I like to think about location, and I like to really dig into what your goals are. So is the goal to cash flow right away, or is the goal to have some additional long-term wealth building happening in the background while you're still working? And so I'll send out the spreadsheet for that, and we evaluate it. Everyone can evaluate a different way. I don't want to buy something that doesn't cash flow, but I'm not at a point in my life where I need the rentals to be cash flowing to pay my bills. And so we're more building personally in my late 30s, almost 40, building a portfolio that's going to support us once we go into retirement. Which I'm not going to probably ever officially retire. I'm going to leave the last question for when we're ready to wrap up. So let's get through. We have 15 minutes to get through some of these these other questions, Em, which have been really good.
Yeah.
Tanya said, do you suggest setting up an LLC? We do. I also suggest that you talk to an attorney and that I make sure you know I'm not an accountant nor an attorney, and neither is Emily, but we play one on Zoom. And so we would suggest that you set up an LLC for each property, and then also setting up a separate bank account for each property. And so that is, it's laid out in something that we'll follow up with after this as well. We have a blog on setting up a rental. So yes, we do set up a separate LLC. We do them as single person LLCs. Emily, do you?
No, used to. We've changed some things, but we do not have a bank account for every property. We probably should. That's good advice.
Yeah. Just helps with the combing. Yeah. So that makes more sense why you're like about $2,000 a month, because it's together. Cool. So yes, I do suggest that. And we have a really great attorney who will even come to your home or just do Zoom if you want help with this kind of stuff. I kind of call it like, estate planning, which sounds more real than it is. The reality is you want to be protected, but then you also want to make sure that if something were to happen to you, that it's going to go to who you want it to go to. And because if things get into probate court, that's not nice. That's not good. If someone wants to sell their primary home and has not lived there for more than 2 years, and they want to take the net proceeds to downsize into a townhome and buy a second home in the mountains as an investment property, is there a way they can avoid capital gains taxes? Do you see this question too, Em?
I don't see it, but is that McKenna? I was talking to her about this.
Yes. Yeah. We're at one, I would definitely have them call their accountant.
Yeah.
And 2, they have up until 3 years. So how long have they not lived in it? They have to have lived in it as a primary for 2 of the last 5. So you have up until 3 years. And then I think that as a secondary property, you're going to have to pay capital gains taxes on that. They have lived there since February 2021.
Not even a year.
Yeah. Oh, so they haven't lived there very long. They definitely need to talk to their accountant.
Yeah, that one's tricky.
That proceeds to downsize into a townhome, buy a second home in the mountains as an investment property. First and foremost, I would, if it's your primary home and they're still living in it, the tax issue, from how I understand it, would be very much tied to the fact, are they forced to downsize for some reason, or can their accountant make that argument? And that is going to allow them to do whatever they want with those proceeds. Otherwise, they're going to need to wait until February of 2023 plus a day to close on the sale in order to be able to shelter those from capital gains taxes. What they could do is leverage any equity from it, take a HELOC out on it to invest in the mountains, and then wait a little bit to sell the primary and then to pay off the HELOC that way. So yeah.
Smart. I like that plan.
It's a good way to access money with a HELOC. And if the mountain investment's paying enough, then they can definitely be paying that HELOC back. We want HELOCs to be more of a short-term solution than a long-term one. So yeah, you're welcome. You are welcome. Emily was talking about, the credit scores and finding the right people, and it depends on the rental. And Lisa Zita is reminding me, who's on our investment team here, that there are different levels of rentals. And so the home in Wheat Ridge you referenced would be what I would consider an A+ rental. It was a beautiful home. It had been renovated right before you guys bought it. So it wasn't an old renovation. It was on a huge lot. And then the rental rate was?
Started at $2,850. We ended at $3,200.
Yeah. So when you're renting at that level, it's an A+ rental, right? So it's not like you're in LA and you're $40,000 a month, but it's a high-end rental, and that will give you a more high-end clientele. And so that's when you're good with having the granite and having the nice, the nicer floors and all that stuff, right? But ultimately, the rental really comes down to who is its user going to be. So you don't buy a home that's going to be rented at $1,000 a month and put slab granite in, or put, you don't mess with it. Just remember that paint and carpet go a long way. And the biggest thing that we're trying to do as landlords is ensure that we're providing safe housing that's healthy for its tenants. It does not need to be perfectly maintained. And so I think with that, the big piece is you're not striving for perfection in every single home. And to parlay onto what Emily said about getting professional photos done, the nice part about having professional photos done is it is presenting as a very well taken care of home. And I do think that in the eye of the beholder, then they're going, okay, this has been a well taken care of home, and I'm going to take care of it too. Right. And I think that that's a huge piece of it. We're under contract on a fourplex right now, and there's structural questions. Is it going to keep me from buying it? Nope. It's not. That doesn't scare me. It was built in the 1950s. It has a crawl space. Like, we're going to be fine, but I'm for sure going to figure that out. And so for me, that's not perfect. Actually, good news is no homes at this point are perfect because they're all man-made still. I guess some of those tiny homes, they might be like manufactured by machines at this point, but everything's man-made, so it's going to have its imperfections. So I do like to encourage people not to get too hung up on what's perfect right now, that it is really more of a long-term play. But of course that can vary per person. Do I want to buy something and make it pretty and make it my style and make it like cute because it's my little bundle of baby joy? For sure. But that's just not where your priorities can be, because you never know what's going to happen. And this has nothing to do with tenants even, but like Emily was saying, like, you put in all new carpet because you want the carpet to be nicer than the sewer backs up. Hopefully you have proper insurance and that's getting paid for, but if not, you're just replacing carpet again, and you only did it the first time for aesthetic reasons. So I guess that would be the blanket rule of all my rambling, is to say, do not make improvements to a home that are purely aesthetic if it's not going to pay off extremely fast. And if it's not necessary to get it to the level it needs to be in order to get the rental rate you have intended to get on it. Yep. Otherwise, just wait for it to be a health and safety issue.
Yeah, that's the thing. We renovated the house last year. We didn't replace the carpet. We had it professionally cleaned. Like, don't spend money that you don't need to. Yep. And yeah, making sure that it's safe. You have your smoke and carbon monoxide detectors, making sure your HVAC and your electrical and all that is, up to date, and like things are taken care of. That's more important than, yeah, like you said, putting super high-end finishes in a house that you're, charging $1,000 a month for. So it really is property to property. But yeah, the house doesn't have to be beautiful like you would want it, like Lindsay said, but it just needs to be in good condition.
Yeah. Yeah. And then you can hold them accountable to the condition you turned it over to them in, which is huge.
Yeah.
We have a 3-step process for everything in life, right? So first and foremost, we're going to tell you to take our investor quiz, our investor personality quiz. And so we're going to send that out after this. We're going to tell you to put together your goals, and there's some structure around that, and then set up a meeting, a consultative meeting with someone on our team, and talk about what you really want to do with investing. We're here to serve you by answering these questions.
Sorry, my dog is crazy. I'm going to shut my door.
Is that Nova or Ziggy?
Nova.
Okay, I was gonna say, can't imagine Ziggy has that energy at this point. Yeah, it's fine. So anyways, we're going to send out about that 3-step process, but it really is just getting some one-on-one time with somebody on our team. And we, like everything else, are going to base all of our recommendations on your goals. And we're going to help you build that team of professionals. When Emily talked about getting your team, you need a plumber and electrician, but you also need an accountant. You need a proper attorney that can help you with these things cost effectively. Maybe you're leveraging a property manager, or maybe you're using a property management software that can take some of that second guessing out for you. And so we're going to help you develop that team, and then locate the right property, or turn your current home into a rental, and then buy the next property, or whatever that looks like. The other thing that I'm not always best about pointing out is that we have a network nationwide, and even into Canada, that we can give referrals to. There's different areas. It really depends on, Emily was an interesting is an interesting story of talking about having all those rentals in Minnesota, and then also doing the investing here in the Denver metro area, and now going into the mountains. Variety is the spice of life. I think that's a saying. And so we have, I mean, one of my coaching besties is in Utah and just bought an investment property in South Wayne, Indiana, Fort Wayne, Indiana, which is not South Bend. But that because it has a great cap rate, right? So there's different ways to evaluate rentals, and you know, we can get into that even more when we talk one-on-one. We're going to continue to do interview sessions like this, and I will always end with, hey, expert, hey, real woman with real investment story and real success. What is the best advice for someone you have interested in investing, or someone who might be interested in investing in real estate and growing their long-term wealth through real estate?
I feel like I have so many things that I could say for that. Twofold, maybe threefold, twofold. One, start now, like literally start today. That doesn't necessarily mean go buy a house today. I mean, unless you have access to those funds and they're sitting there in a savings account, you're not doing anything with them, then yes, today, go buy the house today. But start your plan today. So like you were talking about, get your team in place, sit down with a lender. A good lender will talk about your short-term and your long-term goals. What do you want to do with this first house? Do you want to buy 5 houses? Okay, let's talk about how we can get you in the first one. Let's talk about what that might look like going forward. Like looking at all your different, you know, financial pieces. Talk to a good lender, talk to a good real estate agent, somebody who understands what your goals are and wants to and is invested in helping you achieve those goals. Like you said, the accountant, like having your team. You have different teams throughout the process, but up front, you really do need a team. You need to be talking to people who are doing what you want to do and understand what your goals are. You know, surround yourself with people who are going to help you to get to that place you want to be. So yeah, start today. Whether that's, if you have the money, go buy the house. If you don't, figure out what steps you need to take to get there and start today with that plan. And then a little piece of advice that I would tell people, specifically if they are looking to invest in Colorado, where home values, as we know, are just high, you know, their prices are high. If you're willing to kind of grind it out, as I call it, Brian and I have been grinding at this process for a long time. That sounds dirty and it's not meant to be.
And that has nothing to do with the 6-month pregnancy we were just talking about. No. Different kind of grinding it out.
Kind, yes.
Yes.
But if you're willing to move, buy a primary residence, live in it for 2 years, and then go buy another property, because realistically, you know, coming up with a 20% down payment for an investment property in Colorado is tough. And it's going to sort of, if that's what's going to keep you on the sidelines, don't do it. Go buy a house, put 5% down, move into it. And then, you know, you'd be shocked at the power of appreciation. And I know appreciation might change over time, but, you know, even in a stabilized market, if you've got 3 to 5% appreciation on a $400,000 or $500,000 house, that's going to give you opportunity in a few years that you didn't have before if you were just waiting to try to save 20%. So it can sometimes be daunting to move, but it's worth it. Like move into it and move again. And then now you've got a rental property. And if you can do that a couple of times, like it's awesome.
Yeah, I think that's really great advice. Yeah, get started, know your tribe, and be willing to move.
Yes.
Emily mentioned 2 years. That's only if you want to sell it and not take cap gains on it. If you're willing, if you know you're going to keep it forever, you are signing as an owner occupant that you're committing to live there for a year. It's so true. You can even move that quickly. Yeah, but it just depends. The 2 years does give you freedom until you've been gone for 3, and then you're
right.
Then you got to move back into it. That's awkward. But no, there's all kinds of creative ways to put together your portfolio. I think the biggest thing that we're trying to do here, and Emily, thank you so much for taking the time to tell your story today. We just want to make sure that everyone knows it's not a game just for the millionaires and billionaires to play in. And hardworking Americans get to own real estate and leverage real estate too. And especially when they're willing to only buy and own what they need to reach their life goals and don't need to go incredibly insane with all these purchases and have 500 units for what, right? And so I think that that's just the biggest thing we're trying to do is have these conversations and know that like it's an ever-changing world and everyone's journey is going to always look a little bit different. And so we will continue to tell these stories of real investors and what their successes and hardships have looked like. Property management and, owning rental properties is extremely, extremely easy until it's not. But building wealth through real estate is simple, and we're here to help guide you on that. And we look forward to hearing from you. We'll be following up later this afternoon with all of you on our follow-up items. If you have any other questions, we have Emily for a couple more minutes, but I know she's rushing off to more meetings, and I'm also going to shove some food in my mouth before my 1 o'clock. So thank you guys for your time, and we will be back in touch shortly.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.